tell entrepreneurs when they come to me, don't start working on your R&D right away. I'm like, the first thing you need to do is find a co-packer. Stop your R&D process. Stop messing around in a lab and playing and fiddling with it, or in your kitchen, or wherever you're doing it in your garage. I'm like, stop. You've just wasted 2 years of your time. I'm like, stop it. Go find a co-packer first, because if you don't know who's going to make it and how they're going to make it, you're wasting your time. Especially, I mean, there's some exceptions, but really, the first thing you need to do, especially if you're making something unique or special or different, is make sure there's someone out there who can actually make this product for you.
Hey everyone, this is Adam Yee, food scientist and podcast host of Startup CPG's new podcast section, R&D Radio, where we interview product developers and what they do and how they can help you build your CPG business. Today's guest is my friend Rachel Zemser, who heads A La Carte Connections, which helps startups and brands bring food ideas to life, from concept to market. Rachel is a certified food and culinary scientist, and her services offer in-lab or remote product development for any food type, anywhere. Flexible, creative, and science-driven innovation you can trust. I've known Rachel for a while, and she is a wealth of knowledge. We dive into why the all-natural trend is making product stability more challenging than ever, and why she believes the industry is moving towards a cleanish label that balances health with actual shelf life. Rachel also breaks down the realities of working with co-packers, explaining why founders need to stop looking for a, quote, partner and start acting like professional customers to get their products made. Enjoy this episode with Rachel Zemser. Hey everyone, this is Adam Yee from the Startup CPG podcast. I'm here with Rachel Zemser to chat about product development. So let's get into it. Rachel, I know who you are, but for the audience, I would love to know who you are and how you got your start in product development.
Yeah, great to be here, Adam. So I am what they call a gold star food scientist. I didn't become a food scientist accidentally. I didn't just fall into it or transition in from another industry. I have been a food scientist from day one. I walked into the food science department as a freshman at UMass Amherst, and I studied food science, and I started working as a product developer out of college. At my very first job at Dan & Yogurt in Fort Worth, Texas, and later on I worked at Kagome, a tomato sauce company, and I've had a variety of jobs in R&D and food science and food safety. I've streaked microbiology plates. I've done it all.
Wow, you have a very similar background to me. I'm also, I guess, a gold star food scientist too. I hopped in. I chose the major right away. I went to Cal Poly and also been to Texas and also did streaking plates. So, it's always interesting to, that's why we're kind of kindred spirits in this realm of product development. But maybe this is where we differ. Rachel, do you have anything you kind of specialize in as a product developer?
As a consultant, which is what I've been doing for the past 15, 17 years, and I think that this kind of applies to a lot of consultants who are independent and they're not like a Coolinex or a Matheson and have a massive building with lots of,
lots of machines,
equipment.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of machines. We kind of have to specialize in things that we can do in a laboratory, in an R&D type setting. Like I don't have retort equipment, so I don't typically specialize in retort or canned foods. I typically do things that I can do, and I'm good at those things. I'm good at protein bars. I'm good at baked goods. I'm good at confections. I can do some pasteurization. I can do pretty much anything that can be done in a lab that doesn't require multi-million-dollar equipment. Now, not to say that I can't do those things, but I would probably have to work with an outside pilot plant or maybe work directly with the co-packer. My training as a food scientist, I can do pretty much anything, especially since I've been doing it for 30 plus years. But I guess I tend to specialize in the products that I can do more easily in the laboratory. Those are the things that I end up doing more often than not.
Yeah, I recall now when I first started working in industry, I think I stumbled upon your ebook or your book. And I think this was the first book I've ever seen about someone kind of teaching someone how to do product development. Now you can find them everywhere in Amazon, whatever. But yours was kind of the OG. I'd love to hear about essentially this product development book.
Yeah, I wrote that book in 2000, I think 11 or 12 or 13. And yeah, I still have that book.
What's the official title of that?
The Food Business Toolkit for
Nice.
Entrepreneurs.
Love it.
And yeah, and I wrote that book back in 2011 or 12, and I still sell it as a downloadable PDF on my website. I have to update it every couple of years because there's tons of links in there that are like FDA and USDA, and they're constantly changing their links on me. And I have lots of links to different industry locations. And so I always have to go in there and update it. But yeah, it's just a basic guide, and the rules don't really change that much. It's how to find co-packers, how to create a formula, how to basically get things started, how to come up with an idea, how to work with co-packers. And sometimes I think, I should really just do a major overhaul, a major update of the information. But then I read through it and I'm like, you know what? Not much has really changed. The information, the process, the rules, everything is pretty much the same. And even how I operate with my clients is very similar. Coming up with the idea, coming up with the formula, coming up with finding your co-packer, creating your prototypes, understanding the food safety rules and regulations that surround your product. Everything, the rules have not really changed that much. Maybe I could include some chapters on AI and how that's coming into play, because that's changing the game a little bit. But you still need real people to taste and create the food, though, where we haven't come too far yet.
AI can't taste yet, right?
No, AI cannot tell us if it tastes good. So.
Yeah, well, I wanted to give that shout out to that book because I think it has really helped a lot of people. I think just to give an introduction of like the different world food scientists get into versus, someone who thinks they can make a food business, right?
I think so. And I've noticed that there's a lot of courses out there that are geared towards a non-food scientist can just do it all on their own. But I don't know if I totally agree with that. I think that a non-food scientist can maybe get started on their own, but you have to have really good math skills, and you have to really be tuned into the network of ingredient suppliers and co-packers. You have to understand like the game and how it's played.
Yeah, there's a language and there's a dance, right?
Yeah, there's a language, there's a dance, there's a network, there's a way to do things that some people get it, and you just have to be in that world for a while to understand like just how to get samples and how to formulate and how to balance out those formulas and how to talk to co-packers and deal with them and set up test runs. And, I think that reading my book is a great guide to be a part of that world and that community, but you still kind of need a food scientist to be a part of your team. But it's good to be informed when to jump in.
Yeah. I feel like having a food scientist on your team gives you a little bit of credibility, especially when you work with like ingredient guys or co-packers, right? Having a food scientist present and having them talk in a certain, like the way they would like to be talked to, I think how it filters out those who are just tire kickers versus those who are serious about their food business.
Exactly. I mean, I always tell my clients, even before they hire me, because I do a lot of initial consulting by the hour. And I always say, as you're searching for your co-packer, tell them that you have a food scientist already, because they'll take you more seriously. If you just tell them you're a random entrepreneur and you're doing it by yourself, they're going to roll their eyes. They're going to think you don't know anything. Right. But if you tell them, hey, I've got my food scientist, I'm working with a food scientist, they'll breathe a sigh of relief because they'll take you more seriously because they know that you're taking your R&D seriously by bringing in an expert. That would be like me saying I'm trying to fix my own toilet without a plumber, or I'm trying to build a house without a contractor in place. I would have no idea what I'm doing. Like I wouldn't even know how to like saw the wood. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it, but it's probably good if you don't do it, right? It can be really messy.
It's better if I don't even touch anything. Yes.
All right. Well, Rachel, I know you've worked on a ton of different products through kind of your career, and I'd love to hear a story of one of the products you've worked on.
Yeah, so I've worked on so many different products, just hundreds and hundreds of products, and I've talked to people, and I've brought so many things to market, and I brought so many things that were almost brought to market, but then the clients ran out of money or they didn't think 5 steps ahead. But I guess one of my more favorite stories is something I worked on a few years ago with a guy in the Bay Area. His name was Pretty Kenny. He's a musician over in East Bay. And he came to me and he had this idea for a cocktail mixer, like a drink mix that he had been serving to his family and his friends. And he really wanted to commercialize it. And he came to me and he had his own concoction But we had to food science it up a bit. We had to switch from, he was using a lot of supermarket ingredients. So we had to switch to concentrates and we had to find him a co-packer, which we did, which was great. We found like a local co-packer down in Santa Cruz. And then we actually even worked closely with a local sort of cocktail expert, someone who works with bars in the Bay Area to help up their game in the cocktail mixing area. So they came in and yeah, we hired like another outside consultant because I was doing the R&D, but I'm not really a mixologist. So we brought in like a cocktail guy who made it even better by adding in some herbal extracts. And then we went to production and he made this great cocktail mix. It had like orange and cranberry and some herbal extracts and some caramelized flavors in there. And he even won some awards. I think he won Best in Show, the Tasting Alliance. He was one of the finalists for the Best in Class in 2024. It was called Island Vibe. And he's got an Instagram and he's done a few production runs. And I think he's planning on doing more. Things got a little expensive because he had to put it in glass bottles. So he was trying to solve for that. Typical R&D startup problems. How do we make the bottle cheaper? How do we save on costs? But yeah, it was great because he was a personality. So he had a really good story behind his product. And it was a whole pasteurized beverage. So that was fun. Bottles coming off the line. So yeah, most people do bars and baked goods and things like that. So that was a lot of fun that we got to do this musician's cocktail mixer. So that was fun.
Yeah, it's always great to get one, it's just amazing to see your product like off the factory line. It's good to see it on the store shelf, and it's really good to get an award for, the product you made, even though no one ever knows it was you, but right?
Exactly. Yeah. The food scientist never gets any credit. So we're just like behind the scenes. Although I did see a post on LinkedIn the other day, a guy, I think from Mondelez, one of the food scientists, posted something online about how one of his products had made it on the shelf. And I was really excited to see someone from a large company like Mondelez posting, from the food scientist perspective. It wasn't like a marketing person. It wasn't like a CEO or branding or Mondelez. It was the food scientist saying, hey, I worked on this and look, it made it on the shelf and we're so excited. We worked so hard. And I was really excited to see that the food scientist was posting that because food scientists rarely get the credit, the behind the scenes people.
Yeah, for sure.
So I saw that was out there. So I was like, yeah, you go Mondelez, random person posting. Yes.
Yeah. More food scientists should share the products they made. I definitely agree with that. And the only reason why I did entrepreneurship to that.
Even if you just improved the crunchiness of an Oreo, I want to hear about it. Yes.
Yeah, there are some crazy inventions that take a lot of years actually to really make. So you've worked with a ton of products. You specifically met with a lot of like entrepreneurs who probably have zero experience. And I'd love to just coalesce those experiences to advice. And I'd love to hear one piece of advice that you think would be useful for entrepreneurs in CPG as they make or improve their product.
This is my advice. And a lot of people don't really agree with this, but I always tell entrepreneurs when they come to me, I always tell them, don't start working on your R&D right away. I'm like, the first thing you need to do is find a co-packer. I'm like, stop your R&D process. Stop messing around in a lab and playing and fiddling with it or in your kitchen or wherever you're doing it in your garage. I'm like, stop. I'm like, you've just wasted 2 years of your time. I'm like, stop it. I'm like, go find a co-packer first, because if you don't know who's going to make it and how they're going to make it, you're wasting your time. Especially, there's some exceptions. Maybe if you're making like a chocolate chip cookie, or maybe if you're making a protein bar, because the equipment is fairly similar across the board, but not really. But really, the first thing you need to do, especially if you're making something unique or special or different, is make sure there's someone out there who can actually make this product for you. If you're making a Fig Newton layered thing, or if you're making something with a new ice cream with allulose in it, or you're making anything that's different that hasn't been done before, you need to make sure that there's someone out there who can make it. And let alone the fact that if you're a brand new entrepreneur and you don't really know like how volumes work or what you're in for, you need to understand that like you may not be able to find a co-packer who's going to make less than 1 million units for you or 300,000 units. And you need to know that before you spend $20,000, $30,000 on your R&D. Get 3 steps ahead of the game and know who's going to make it for you, and have those conversations with the co-packers and understand what your step 3 is going to be, and then go back to step 1 and say, okay, food science consultant that I've just hired, I kind of already know what I'm going to be in for in step 3. Now I want to go back to step 1, and I already know that the co-packer that I want to work with can only make triangle fig Newtons, and I know that it has to weigh like 1.5 ounces. So I want to backtrack, and I want to kind of start knowing that information so I don't waste my time and make a 5-ounce fig Newton that I'm going to have to redo later on. So start ahead of the game, knowing like the process in the co-packer is 60% of your product and the R&D is like 40%. I always tell people, unless you've been in the business before and you're like readjusting, or you're making like a new flavor potato chip and you've already made 17 chips already with that co-packer, if you don't know what you're doing and you've never made it before and it's like brand new, you're messing around in your kitchen, just stop messing around in the kitchen. And first steps first, find the co-packer. Go to keychain.com or PartnerSlate.com. Those are 2 of the big search engines for finding co-packers, and begin your search. And you don't have to seal the deal with them. You don't have to sign a contract, but know who they are, know they exist, have a conversation with them, and have 2 or 3, like just on hold, like in the bag, waiting for you for later, and understand what their minimums are and what equipment they have. Have some idea of how you're going to have to formulate your product. And then at least you're not starting blind. That's my big advice.
I generally agree with that. I do it a slightly different way, especially if they like need help vetting a co-packer or doing it. I like to do it in tandem with the formula. Has to be in tandem with co-packer, but also as a food scientist, I have kind of an end in mind of what's going on, like at the end product, like where's it going to be sold, how is it going to be sold, what temperatures does it be when it's sold, right? Which I think a lot of entrepreneurs can be short-sighted about as well. And I think you should talk to co-packers as soon as possible. That is true, because you're going to learn a lot about how they communicate with you, the process of how they communicate with you, and also just in general learning about their minimums and machines as you've talked about. So I agree there. Like, you have to start building this muscle of communicating with co-packers. Well, it is a very expensive business decision to go with a co-packer, right? So I like your advice there for sure.
Yeah, I have a client who came to me the other day, and she told me that she went to a co-packer, and her co-packer is like, well, I won't even speak with you until you have a formula. And then the co-packer in the same breath said, once you have a formula, I can tell you which ingredients I can source for you, and then you can swap it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, that makes no sense whatsoever, because you can't just swap out one protein powder for another. You can't swap out one cocoa powder for another. And I've heard this story come from many entrepreneurs where the co-packer wants to dictate to them which ingredients they need to use, but yet they want that client to come to them with a formula so they can then change it out. And I'm like, you can't do it that way. I'm like, but that makes it really difficult for the developer or the entrepreneur who might be developing it themselves, because you have to go to that co-packer first and say, okay, tell me which cocoa powder you're using. Tell me which protein powder you're using. Tell me which binding syrups you want me to use. Tell me which sugars I can use. Tell me which suppliers I can work with. And then you have to go to the suppliers and get all those ingredients. It's really hard when you're working with entrepreneurs to source all these ingredients, figuring out, if these co-packers are going to force you to work with their ingredients, or if you can work with your own ingredients. And if you do work with your own ingredients, you have to buy like those MOQs. So all of these questions should be known sooner than later by having conversations with the co-packers from the get-go. Because you could go to them with your final finished product and they're like, sorry, you can't work with any of those suppliers that you've just spent the last 2 years perfecting. And this could be the perfect co-packer. Like, they could be like in your backyard, and now you have to go to another part of the country because you can't work with your favorite co-packer because they won't let you work with anything that you perfected. Find the co-packer first. Yeah. And like you said, also figure out what you're going to do after you make the product.
You have 16 pallets. Yeah. What do you do when you have 16 pallets of product, right?
Right. I mean, because it's aging. Once it's made, the clock is ticking. You get a little leeway with frozen, but anything that's fresh, forget it. Protein bars in 6 months, they're going to be rock hard. And they're not going to taste good anymore. And that's it. Clock is ticking. You need to have a plan. You can't just make it and then figure it out later. Those bars are not going to sell themselves.
The hardest thing about food is that it does, unfortunately, age over time compared to other goods. But yeah, I think those are all really good points. What I learned from like all of these like business entrepreneurs is that eventually you will find a good fit for you. You just have to keep on trying. So even if someone says no to this, there might be another co-packer that might say yes to this, right? And it all can be negotiable as well.
Yeah, everything's negotiable. And I think that entrepreneurs also need to understand that unless you have millions of dollars, the co-packer is probably going to have more
Leverage, right?
negotiating power.
Yep.
You kind of need to bend to them a little more than they're going to bend to you. Like, they're not really going to be making out well with this deal of helping you. They're doing the entrepreneur the favor, and more often than not, they're not going to make a killing. They're taking a gamble on you. They're not going to charge that 10 grand that they're charging you for the test run is not really profitable for them. They're not making much, and they're going to have leftover pallets of your ingredients in their warehouse that they may have to throw away in a year if you never do another run. You have to consider it like a favor and be extra nice to that co-packer that's willing to take you on. Unfortunately, that's usually the case.
You never know what's going on behind the background for the co-packers either. There was one client who got rejected because the credit rating didn't work out too well. And then there was another client I had that was accepted to a pretty good lollipop manufacturer. And I was just surprised how she got in there is because the lollipop manufacturer lost a lot of international clients. So you just never know sometimes the discussions you could have with co-packers.
Yeah, and you don't want to nickel and dime them, and you want to just be grateful that they took you in. If you're small and just starting out, just be glad, and you buy them lunch.
There you go. Go to their plant, buy them lunch. I'd love to know since you worked with so many different products throughout this kind of whole span, what have you seen as a trend or ingredient that you're really interested in right now?
What have I seen? I'm definitely seeing the usual players. I'm seeing a lot of electrolytes. I'm seeing in drink mixes, like it started with liquid IV, but lots of copycats are out there now. Everybody wants to make sure they're hydrated. There was a really great Super Bowl commercial last night from liquid IV about with lots of toilets flushing, and they were saying, "Look at your pee, is it yellow?" That was funny. And, of course, lots of protein and fiber always on the table, lots of collagen. One thing I'm kind of noticing is low sugar is still a thing. I think that people are getting a little frustrated with, even though I love allulose and I don't love erythritol, but allulose and erythritol are still out there and they're still allowing us to make low sugar, no sugar claims. They're also letting us down a lot from a functionality standpoint.
Yes.
Taste-wise, not good. Allulose has a lot of problems with functionality. We can't get it to properly crystallize, and erythritol won't properly brown. So I think that we're seeing the trend of a little bit of sugar coming into products, small amounts. And I've seen, our friend Tom King from Icon.
Yeah, that guy's great.
He told me small amounts of sugar are okay, like maybe 5-10%. Yes, we still want like low sugar. We can still use erythritol. We can still use allulose to get there, and monk fruit and stevia and all those great alternatives. But we still need just enough sugar to give us the browning, to give us the texture, because sugar is not just about sweetness, it's about functionality. We need small amounts. So I think we're going to see that trend where people are going to use a little sugar to bring back the function and some sweetness. I think products are going to be much better tasting if we just put a little bit of sugar in there and not just make it straight up like how much gut-wrecking sugar alcohols can we jack up our product with so we can't even eat it anymore. I mean, all these bars like David and bars that are just filled with maltitol and erythritol and allulose. The Epogy, here's a bar with all Epogy, fiber, and allulose. You literally eat it and everything goes in one and out the other.
It does hurt my stomach when I eat the David bars.
Yeah, and it hurts your stomach. And we need a little bit of energy. It's not even an energy bar because there's no energy because you're not digesting any of it. So, we're going to put a little bit of real food back in there, a little bit of like realness. And collagen barely counts as protein anyway because it doesn't have all the amino acids. But I guess it's good for your skin and your nails. So they say. I'm a little skeptical on that, but yeah. I mean, I guess it can't hurt. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're completely right about I guess call it the low sugar trend. And I've gone through a few products that have said like, oh yeah, a little bit of sugar is okay. I think the thing is like, we don't want to see Coca-Cola, which has like what, 30 grams of sugar per can, but like 5 grams of sugar per can is pretty good.
Yeah, like 5 grams is okay. And it's just enough to make it taste good and be better. Yeah. I mean, and I think that people are trying to use like date sugar because date sugar
Oh, I've
doesn't
seen a lot
count
of those.
as
Yeah.
like added sugar.
Oh,
I'm on
okay.
the fence about that. I've had some discussions with food scientists whether date sugar is an added sugar or it's just a sugar. I'm not quite sure. It's a debate. But anyway, as of right now, if you put date sugar in your product, apparently the FDA says that it's not an added sugar, but it is sugar. But a little bit of date sugar goes a long way, and that can improve a product and not count as an added sugar.
I did not know that actually. Wow. Even I learned things in this podcast. Oh, huh.
Yeah.
All right. That's good to know. All right. Well, Rachel, this has been really good to talk to you. Just the final question is, where can we find you if we want to learn more about you? You know, if you have a website, you can plug that in too.
Well, I am first on the CPG database because my website is A La Carte Connections and it begins with an
That's
A.
so smart.
So
That's so smart.
I didn't plan it that way. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been A La Carte for a
Apparently
long time,
Amazon-
so I was lucky.
Amazon was the
Yes.
reason why Amazon was chosen because of the A, actually.
So yeah, so I'm allacarteconnections.com. You can go to my website. There's a contact box in there, and all the inquiries come to me and my team, and we respond. I respond, and I evaluate all opportunities. Yeah, so happy to hear from anyone and see what they're interested in doing.
Great, Rachel.
So
Thank you so much for being on the show.
yep, it's great to talk to you.
Of course. Thank you for listening to Startup CPG's R&D Radio. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. We've now arrived together at the end of another episode of the Startup CPG podcast. I'm proud to be part of the team that's part of the top globally ranked podcasts in CPG. As you may know, we're not just a podcast, we're a community of brands and experts, and you should join. You can sign up at startupcpg.com, and you'll then get invited to our online Slack community and be informed on great guests and amazing networking opportunities to get you in front of buyers, investors, brands, and more. Thank you for listening and have a great day.